On this edition of Cereal Cooks, beef stroganoff. Now, here's the problem. I went to the store yesterday and there were no wide egg noodles, so I'm gonna make my own. I start with Elizabeth's basic recipe of 3.5 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of Himalayan pink salt, and then I'm gonna add 4 eggs in just a moment. Let's get this started. I'm gonna mix together the flour and the salt first, and then slowly add in my 4 eggs that I've already beaten. Okay, well that went in faster than I was hoping, but that's all right. And by the way, the dough hook is on the mixer. The mixer, if you're interested, if you don't have one of these KitchenAids, is available on foodnationradio.com. Pulling the flour off the side walls and creating a big ball. We're gonna let this go for about 7 minutes. We're about 3 minutes in and it's still a little on the dry side, so I'm gonna add 1 more egg to this. And there you go, we've come together in a nice ball. I'm gonna stop the mixer and then I'm gonna cover this with plastic wrap and just let it rest for about 30 minutes. There you go, we're covered in plastic wrap. We're just gonna let this rest for 30 minutes. In the meantime, I am triple washing some porcini mushrooms that I got at the grocery store. They did have those. Anyway, they're triple washed and now soaking. So we set the mushrooms aside for right now. It's been 30 minutes. My dough is ready to make into my wide egg noodles. I'm gonna cut this in half and save half of it for another meal. All right, so I floured down my parchment paper and the dough. I'm gonna divide this into quarters and then we'll start running it through the food processor, through the pasta maker. So my pasta's all rolled out, and just to make it easier to handle, I go ahead and I cut them into smaller pieces. Now, we're just gonna let this dry. Let's get started on my sauce. Those mushrooms that I showed you earlier, I put them in a small pan, a small saucepan, and I just let them lightly simmer here for a while I was making the pasta. And now I want to keep the liquid, but strain the mushrooms out of there and make sure that I don't get any sand that might be left in the mushrooms. I've set aside the mushrooms and separated them from the water that they were soaking in, and I'm gonna bring this to a boil. To that, I'm gonna add 1 cup of beef stock. I'm gonna stir in 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, and this is gonna be coming to a boil in just a moment here. There we go, and we're just gonna lower the heat just a little bit and let this reduce. On this side, 1 tablespoon of olive oil and 1 tablespoon of ghee, and I'm going to fry up some onions here. As my onions finish up, I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of minced garlic and the mushrooms. I'm gonna saute these for just a few minutes here. Now I wanna transfer my sauce to this pan. We'll give that a good stir and we'll just leave that on simmer for a little bit here. All right, there's one thing missing from my beef stroganoff recipe, beef. What you don't know is overnight, I had a 2-pound chuck roast in the crock pot. I just took it out, let it cool slightly, just enough to cut it, and this is ready to go in my sauce. Oh, look at that. I put the beef in with the sauce and the mushrooms and onions, and we're just gonna put a cover on that and let that lightly simmer. Let's get started on making the noodles. I've cut up my wide egg noodles. I kind of cheated. Instead of using a knife, I used a pizza cutter. Made it really easy. And these are all about 1/2 to 3/4 inch wide. My wide noodles are now swimming around in a pot of boiling hot water. Those will be done in just a couple of moments. I've turned the heat down on the sauce here and on the meat, and I've added 1/2 cup of sour cream to this, and we're gonna give this a nice gentle stir. All right, my stroganoff is done. My homemade wide noodles are done. It's time to put this all together.